All right, a short podcast on coffee and its effects. So, in general, I mean, I don't drink coffee, but I'm not against coffee per se uh, um, as a substance, I guess you could say. There is a drug in coffee, caffeine. We know that, and there's certain acids and certain endocrine disruptors, and there can be. They can work for and against. So we have studies on all sides, right? So who knows what to believe? But the thing is as we grow as a society, certain phenomenon becomes more prevalent. Meaning, for example, there's more inflammation now than there was before, and there's more stress, and there's more acidity in a general way. Acidity is the bed of inflammation, which is the bed of cancer and everything else. So, in a more acidic culture, yes, we're going to eat probably less. We're going to drink less. Big, huge glass of fresh squeezed orange juice, for example. We're going to have smaller glasses. We're going to probably adapt to things because we become more acidic. As the soil becomes more acidic, we start to adapt our food choices. We don't see that. We don't know. We don't think about the fact that the soil's lack of magnesium, this, that, and the other, is creating our dependencies on chocolate or this or that. We're not seeing that the trends above ground are affected by the soil itself. But that's okay. There's ways to pull this off, and so coffee has become almost like a huge catch-all as far as overcoming or not having to see, first of all, kidney insufficiency, because it masks that, because every time you feel it, well, you take the coffee and you go back up again. So that's one thing, but then it also has become a kind of for digestion, we use it for digestion too. Like, it helps because it's like, if you've ever tasted bitters, if you order some bitters online and you drink them, and then you drink a coffee right after that, even though they're totally different substances, you'll taste the thing that's the common denominator in both if you do that taste test, and that is the bitters of the coffee. So coffee is a form of bitters which helps us to digest and move things along in the liver. And for a lot of people, it's the only form they have. Now, personally, I would prefer to take bitters and skip the coffee, skip the caffeine. And so I think that's what we're doing. We're learning as a culture now to disarm a lot of these things. If you look at the CBD movement, that's kind of, they're trying to disarm marijuana to a certain degree, even though it's not exactly the same plant. They're cousins or whatever, and different strains and all this stuff to lower the THC. But what I mean is we're learning how to disarm these things which we have used. I mean, if you ever heard of the naltrexone movement and some of these other like low dose movements where you're taking a very low dose of something that was technically could have been harmful, a little bit like homeopathy, and this is helping to reduce addiction or reduce the craving of that said thing, or like the naltrexone movement is one of those key examples. The CBD movement is another, like, where we've pulled out some of the heavy parts, the THC and all these like more drug associated parts that are more heavy on the system, and we've put in, which can be useful in some situations, but we're trying to disarm it and get all the levels done right to where we can use different things for different applications and become more of a sober society, hopefully. There's some people who think that the AA movement, this alcohol movement that's out there, where people are stopping to drink, that this is just the beginning of a worldwide reconsideration of the need for alcohol as a general substance, just like we're doing with cigarettes now. These things take, hundreds of years, but they're just now starting to change the way we're looking at all this stuff. So anyway, back to coffee. So coffee covers up that. It covers up deficiencies like from magnesium to basically all the deficiencies that could help the kidneys to function properly, from adrenaline and testosterone and aldosterone and other chemicals that are down there that allow the body to kind of, get things moving without having to, get things moving without having to, take a drug or whatever, and go down and by, like, what would you call it? Kind of like a dual path where you have to create negative consequences too on one of those as you go down the other. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to do this right. So you want to take, there's Swiss, it's called Swiss water decaf, and it's kind of like one of the best decafs you can get because they don't put chemicals, they don't extract with with chemicals, the decaf. And so some people have jumped from coffee to that. That's becoming popular, the Swiss decaf in general, but Swiss decaf, Swiss water decaf as a search term. And then you trying to jump off completely because you're starting with 150 milligrams a day of caffeine if you're taking a cup of coffee, and then you're going down to about 10 milligrams to 15 if you're taking decaf. And eventually you're trying to get off of that. And once you get off of that, your body will start detoxifying a lot of things from the body. It's very difficult to quit coffee, but it's not that difficult if you realize the dangers of it and you're able to kind of like, say goodbye and start to let go of that process of, and also nutrition. I think a lot of coffee increase has happened as we've decreased eating organ meats and liver and things like that gave us a lot of these organ upbuilding properties, which allowed us not just to survive, like have a little steak or whatever it is, a little bit of this protein, and then we survive, but these give some building properties in the liver, like chicken liver or different things, especially if you can find soy-free. But, organic is better than nothing. And so we're trying to get as close as we can to these high vitamin foods in our diet. Learn to make chicken liver pate with potatoes and fry the potatoes and then mix it all together with the livers, and it just tastes amazing, but if you do these things right, they work, and they're not so foreign, I guess, once you do it right. But anyway, coffee has a negative effect for women too. It's more of a masculine type of thing too. I mean, think about it. But it also masculinizes women too. So it has a negative effect on fertility. There's other effects where they say the isoflavones can help, and you got all these contradicting studies. But from what I've gathered over the years, and not only with my own personal experience, but with other people, is that coffee has to be done away with, and we have to figure out what it's masking. And so there can be a depression that comes up when we quit coffee. It's not a mental depression often. It's usually a physical depression, which is happening from the kidneys and the cortisone and everything that's being backed up that's not able to produce properly in the kidneys that we're covering with the coffee. Chinese medicine states that the real energy in the body comes from the qi, like this back ancestral qi, which comes through the kidneys. And this is where our hara, or whatever Japanese kind of martial arts, this is where that energy is coming from. And so when we don't have that true energy, we use a fake energy, which is like a substitute, which is the nervous system. So we produce it all with our cortex and our orthosympathetic system. And so that creates stress and on the nerve system, and that tires the nerve system to where we become kind of, nerves get shot. And a lot of addiction has this etiology too, where there's the shot nerves. And or it could be not an etiology, it could be, a consequence of the addiction too. So I guess there is possibly genetic disposition to certain weakness, maybe in certain areas, but it's confounded with our current behavior and lifestyle and everything else. So coffee has a negative effect for women as well, and for fertility, for miscarriage, for even for conception, all these parts, and even for the baby. I mean, even for the brain. I mean, coffee's vasoconstrictive. It tightens like that, and it has this kind of, it can be healthy for the brain and for thinking and things like that if the body's in the right shape. But the body goes through changes, and sometimes at a certain point your body is like, I'm evolving from this substance. I need to move into this world now, and you need to come with me. And you have to be able to follow that body. The body has a lot of perfection built into it. We don't understand that level of perfection, but it's in there, and we just have to listen to it. It's not going to keep you in the same pattern forever. What used to work to do this or that or get your shape right or whatever it is doesn't work 10 years later. So there's reasons, because the body's helping you evolve. And so we have to be able to follow that. And sometimes it's no longer time. Like my girlfriend, for example, she had lived in front of these waves, these huge towers that were really close to her house. And so she had really bad sleep for 3 years. And when I met her, she started to figure these things out. And we got out of that. She moved out and everything else. But so the coffee corresponded to that era of her life. So she really did need it. But now that she's free of those things, her sleep is much better, and she wakes up in good shape. And so we have to question, do we still need these things, and could they be doing harm? So we have to be smart, and not just because it's legal and everybody else is doing it doesn't mean it's not harmful. Look at the world, though everybody else is doing all sorts of stuff that's harmful to the world, to the politics, to everything. So don't use that as a marker. I mean, alcohol is legal, so are cigarettes, but they can destroy anyone. Cancer and life can be destroyed. Your spiritual life can be destroyed by alcohol. Even just one glass a week can destroy someone's spiritual life. Like, there's all sorts of effects that we just don't perceive because we're not sensitive enough yet. So anyway, so coffee is one of those. It's like a whip master, and it's got that going on you until you can get the food and the things, the metabolites you need to stabilize. Now, I always recommend the threefold remedy for people in general. It's like emu oil, which is non-refined from Walkabout brand, not in plastic pills, but just in the oil itself, and you take teaspoons of that daily. Fermented cod liver oil in glass as well. You take that daily. Get like 2 of each of these, and then also 2 bottles of transdermal magnesium from Zechstein Inside, which is our brand from the Heart of Traditions. It's like Topical Magnesium, and it's the only one in glass bottles. It's only $3 a week, and it's the only one with an approved logo showing the actual origin trademark in Vindam, Holland, which is where everyone else is pretending they're getting their stuff from, but they're importing from Asia and remarketing it as Zechstein. So there's a lot of fakery out there. So this is the right stuff. So this threefold remedy works on all levels and helps. You can't attack deficiencies by one anymore. That's the old paradigm. You have to start using these trinities. There's these trifectas of evil trifectas, you could call them, these things we don't see which are affecting us, from the waves to the air to the water to the food. And so when we start figuring these things out, we have to fight these with these trinities, these other ideas. So you don't just attack the vitamin D, you do vitamin D, A, magnesium, and the vitamin K2, which is what all 3 of these represent. And then you attack all of it at once, and you go through a 3 to 6 month treatment of all of these, maybe even a year. And you get yourself into another state, and you pull yourself out of medical slavery and things like that. Now, of course, these are long-term. There's long-term things that need to be changed, from making your own broth to fermented foods to healthy butter, finding the right sources for all these things, iodine-rich foods like that, and so there's a lot of things that need to be changed. But this first little threefold can help trigger that movement forward. And I've even had a lot of people that started the threefold, which you can look up in other podcasts, and they've had a lot of good things to say about changes in their food sensations and cravings. And they were really salty before. They wanted nothing but that. They wanted nothing but vinegar and acid, and then they've kind of calmed into a middle ground now. Or they had sugar addictions and things like that, which the magnesium was also helping to overcome. So magnesium helps sugar to be used properly in the brain and in the body, so you walk out of that cycle, that hypoglycemic spiking cycle, and you get into something much more stable. So get the deficiencies done and do it right. Don't think you have them covered. Do it the right way. These 3 products I'm mentioning are the only 3 products that you won't find in supplement stores. And why is that? Because this level of sacredness, I guess you could say, of these products allows they're not always available everywhere, and so that's about seeking the truth. It's not just given on a plate. You have to kind of lean into it and look for it. So anyway, and so yeah, coffee is definitely bad for women, and definitely I think it's also bad for pretty much the society in general over time. Now, for now, there's a lot of people that have no problem with it, and that's fine. But over time, it will fade out. It creates more acidity in the body. It triggers the body into a more adrenaline state. And this kind of keeps a lot of the other hormones. Anytime you have a trigger on insulin, it also triggers insulin, by the way. So, that's why we have the loss of appetite and other things. But anything that triggers that insulin cycle, which sugar does and coffee and cigarettes do too, they create addiction. And there's like a spike there, and that spike we get used to. So when we come off of it, we have a mild depression that takes a few months to pull out of, and then if we get the right foods and we get the right supplements and we start moving up out of it, there's a way to heal this stuff. And decaf coffee is not the answer. It can be a transitional phase, but it's not the answer. It has to be completely removed from the system for the hormones that are much softer in nature that come in and can be built up over time. That equilibrium can come back to the body, because anytime there's a panicking hormone that's coming through, the other hormones are a little bit on red alert. Like nobody's listening to those other signals because something else is driving through the system. So we got to move away from that and get back to health and a more sober way of living in general, not just sober from, drugs or alcohol or whatever, but sober in general, like where we're not, that's the dog, he's scratching the floor, but anyway, where we're not, hooked on things. We don't have the addictive life. That's the new religion now. Has a lot to do with addiction because we're all in it to some degree, from codependence on down to, sugar. It's everywhere. So we're trying to clean this stuff up and get sober. And if you want any more stuff on that, or you want to find the transdermal, the topical magnesium that we sell in glass bottles for $3 a week, and do it right, come check us out at theheartoftradition.com. We also have books that we offer for free on the podcast, but we also have newer versions that are paperback of all of these tips and tricks to get yourself back. It's called The Mysteries of Nutrition, Life-Changing Ideas to Heal the Body. And so, yeah, there's solutions out there which are not like, I'm not better than anyone else. I just had to figure all this stuff out the hard way, and I had to abuse my health in so doing to figure it out and bring it back to good standing and go beyond that. So if I can help anyone else on their path, well, so be it. So check us out at theheartoftradition.com.